So when we talk about the scaling CCS, we publish every year what we call the global status of CCS reports. Normally we publish that before COP conference. So around October time, we publish our status reports. These are some figures I present today based on our previous status report, but with some updates recently by March 2024. And then the next version of the report will be updated and published next October. So what we have seen for 6 years in a row, there is an increase in number of projects, CCS projects, different stages of development being announced or under early stage of development or operational or in construction. 35% increase in number of projects per annum since 2017. And that has been the best period for CCS in terms of number of projects announced, but not only in the projects as steel and concrete and announcement, but also when it comes to financing, to policy and regulations, there have been a major push and progress over the last 5 to 6 years. So overall, we took, as per March 2024, we have 564 facilities, or what we define as an institute as commercial facilities, where we have capture, you have a final destination for the carbon dioxide for enhanced or recovery or storage. And out of these 564, 43 facilities globally are operational, and combined they can capture slightly above 50 million tons carbon dioxide per annum. And that's as we speak now, today. Then there are in the pipeline many other projects, mostly coming in North America and Europe, which is expected to bring the total capacity by 2030 close to 500 million tons, like 500 million tons carbon dioxide per annum. This is an amazing progress over the last 5-6 years, but is it enough? It is not. If we want to achieve our targets, and we talked about CCS contributing 15% of the overall global emission reductions, then we need to reach the 1 gigaton per annum type of scale or level globally by 2030. So we need to double the number of projects we are seeing now in the next 5 years. Maybe 2030 is too optimistic to reach the 1 gigaton, but 135 or so on if we want to achieve the net zero targets in 2050 and provide the expected contribution from CCS in this decarbonization approach. In terms of number of projects and capacities, this figure just to show you how the trend look like. So if you have been in CCS long enough, we remember how the curve went up around 2011, 2012. Then it went down with many projects being canceled, especially in Europe and other parts of the world. But beyond 2017, where we had the valley low, numbers started going up in terms of projects being announced, different stages of development. And that brings us, as say, to slightly more than 400 million tons of carbon dioxide expected to be captured by 2030. So that's an excellent progress, but we need to accelerate that further and to see this number of projects doubled. And this number of projects also has been scattered in different geographical regions globally and in different industries. Maybe most of the projects are being announced in North America, driven, for example, in the US with the IRA and other incentives and tax return in Canada, in Europe with the policies and the hubs being developed. Southeast Asia is coming very strongly. China and Japan published their roadmaps for CCS and announced multiple hubs for deployment. We see also announcement in the Middle East. So that diversity of geographical locations and application is very important to drive the industry forward. Another important figure I like always to show is how things developed in terms of application. So the very first CCS project goes back to 1970 or 1972. We all agree and believe we need to start with the low-hanging fruit first. And that's why if you look at the blue dots, which are the operational projects, in the period from 1972 up to 2015, let's say, they were mostly focused around natural gas processing, fertilizers, hydrogen, ammonia industry, which makes sense. These are driven by the industry and the business case. Carbon dioxide concentration or partial pressure is much higher, makes it a better business case and cheaper. But beyond that, we started seeing a diverse application, even in the power sector, where we always talk about power sector being expensive because the partial pressure is much lower in the flue gas. But in the period up to the next couple of years, we will see more projects coming online from the power sector. We have one in Boundary Dam in Canada. There is another one coal-fired power plant in China, and another natural gas combined cycle operational project in China. But there are more announcements coming forward. Different industries, cement, chemicals, iron and steel. We had currently one operational project in Abu Dhabi with a Riyadh project, but there are more projects in the pipeline. Direct air capture is also catching up with multiple projects operational, and there are a couple of projects in the pipeline as well. Ethanol is the largest in terms of number of projects in that industry. So that diversity, different sizes, the scale is very healthy in a sense to see how these hard-to-abate industries and different stakeholders are engaged in including CCS as part of their solution and decarbonization mechanism. So if we focus on the region here, we have currently, as most of you know, we have the 3 operational projects as a capture from a source. And here we talk about commercial projects. I know we have multiple pilot units in Oman and other countries. But if we talk about the 3 large projects, Al Riyadh, Al Uthmaniyya, and Ras Laffan in Qatar, these are more of a capture and enhance or recovery destination. So that's what we define as commercial. There are multiple announced projects in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, UAE, Oman, and different parts of the world, even in Africa, pilot project in South Africa, direct air capture in Kenya. So there are many initiatives here and there going around carbon management in general rather than capture from a source. Then we have seen commitment from the government, net zero targets 2050, 2060, 2070. Companies started moving forward and announcing their own net zero targets before the net zero target for their countries, like we have seen from BDO, from ADNOC, Aramco. They all have set their net zero targets for their own operations. There have been a new announcement coming up. Al Jubail Industrial Hub in Saudi Arabia is a very important milestone. 9 million tons operational 2027, and then it will reach a total capacity up to 44 million tons by 2035. Now, this is a unique because it is the first hub being announced in the region, involving SLB and Linde Engineering as partners with Saudi Aramco. And that is a kind of like a business model we wish to move forward with, where you have multiple industries come together, common infrastructure, common capture facilities and transportation, and that will benefit from the scale of economy, and potentially it would help regulators and policymakers in regulating these sites and make it easier to manage and handle based on the available laws for oil and gas or environment or others. ADNOC announced recently or last year their FID on Habshan projects. So that's another milestone in the UAE. And what's happening, and we had the workshop earlier in the morning on the discussion in Oman, and we will hear more about Oman in the next panel. So there's some good progress happening in the region. When we look at Middle East and Africa in general, we see a great potential for the hubs concept. Saudi Arabia start talk about the East Coast near Al Jubail and that industry as a potential hub. Abu Dhabi has identified multiple locations as potential hubs. There was a good discussion built on the study we conducted in Egypt on the potential hubs and clusters in Egypt, and they identified the delta and the north of Egypt near the Mediterranean as a potential hub. There are some good discussions on utilizing the renewable energy in Africa and North Africa and link that with direct air capture. Some interest in Morocco, some interest in Libya, in Kenya. There's some good work done on pilot project in South Africa, where that could be also another potential hub in Africa. So there is some good case. Hydrogen is an important element in that picture in the region, and we see a very good progress in this part of the world. So if we want to realize the scale globally for CCS, we agree that there are lots of work still needs to be done. and it's not a story a single company or country can achieve on their own. So we need to come all forward together and work together. Very exciting and interesting bridges we are hearing all the time, good announcements. If that doesn't materialize into steel and concrete in the ground and real incentive business models, policy regulations in place by maybe 2030 or bring us to the 1 gigaton scale, then that might cause an issue or a major issue for CCS deployment and moving that forward. So the next 5 to 10 years are very critical for the CCS industry moving forward and to deliver as per the expectations. So scaling up is important, clarifying some of the regulations, accountabilities, community engagement, stakeholder engagement as an early stage is very important. Getting the social benefits needed from incorporating these projects. So when, for example, we had some discussions in multiple regions and last week, for example, in South Africa, where they talk about if we are doing energy transition, moving away from coal, moving away from fossil fuel, what will happen with the labor? What will happen with the villages and the towns that's completely structured and built around the mining industry? CCS and these alternative technologies for energy transition could offer the jobs and the economic benefits for these regions and towns and to keep them at the same level of economic and financing support as they have seen from the oil and gas and maintaining these type of options. So I would leave it there with my slides and updates. And we'll be happy to have discussions in the coffee breaks and to talk more about the status and the potential for CCS in the region and the country.